So I recently decided I wanted to try making my first ever lemon juices, so this is my attempt. So I started with about 600 grams of clay, which I think in reality I could have taken down to 500, but it still worked out quite nicely. Once it was centered and sort of flattened into a puck shape, it's then time to separate the clay into two pieces, the base and rim, and then this middle portion. The middle portion is going to be the juicer part, the fruit shape part, and we start by opening it up by going right down to the very bottom of the bat. We don't want any clay at the bottom, so we are going right down to the bottom. We can then pull up the walls to create the sort of cone shape. Ideally, I think we'd have had this in more of a cone shape in the pulling up stage rather than a straight edge cylinder, but it did still work, but I just think the end shape would have been a little better had we opened it up that way in the first place. We want to make sure there's no water in there as well, so we just use a sponge on a stick, and then we can collar this in to create the dome shape. As I say, if we'd have pulled up in more of a cone shape to start with, it would have been a slightly taller, pointier shape, which I think would have been better, but it will still work quite nicely. We can then take a wooden rib just to refine that shape a little bit, and you can actually apply a decent bit of pressure here because the air is now trapped inside, and that adds a little bit of extra push back when you push in with the rib as well. We can then take that second portion of clay, which is at the base, to pull up a rim, and because this is where the juice is going to collect, we want that to be not too shallow at all. And then before I make the spout, I just use a metal turning tool just to trim up the base. To create the spout, I just take clean, wet hands and then just rub where I want the spout to be, just to thin out that clay a little bit. And then using 2 fingers as a guide, I can pull through to create that spout. This then dries for a couple of days, and then just before it's leather hard, I can use a turning tool or tool of your choice to then carve out these lines, and that will help the juice to flow, but also create a bit of friction as we turn the fruit.